Good morning, my name's Paddy Nixon. I'm the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Canberra, and I'm here to have a conversation with Michelle Grattan about the politics this week. Good morning, Michelle.
Hi, Paddy.
Well, the big news this week in the sitting of Parliament has been the announcement that Australia is in recession. I mean, that's a huge thing, since the first time since the 90s, I believe. The economy's fallen by 7%, GDP's down by 6.3%.
That's over the year.
And that's over the year. So these things, I mean, that's a really significant announcement this week. And then the economist, Callum Pickering, he's saying that the COVID economy is being held together by duct tape of the job seeker and job keeper. How serious is this?
Well, of course, it's very serious because we've got so many people unemployed. We've got the Victorian crisis where it's still in full lockdown. We'll get on Sunday some indication of how that's going to be eased out of, but it'll take a long time. So the unemployment is going to get worse, and I think many more businesses will be reviewing their futures when the current round of JobKeeper ends at the end of September. Now, of course, the government's been forced to keep JobKeeper on, but it'll be at a lower rate. So really what we're seeing is not just really bad times now, although parts of Australia are coming out of the depths better than thought possible earlier, but nevertheless we're in these really bad times, but also we're facing such uncertainty over the next few months, and this is very difficult for people making decisions, and it's not surprising that they're not spending money, even though the figures showed this week that household incomes actually went up. And of course that's because the government has cushioned things so extensively.
And do you think the government has done enough with JobKeeper and JobSeeker, or is there more that they could have been doing?
Look, I think although Labor's been arguing very strongly there shouldn't be this phase back after the end of this month, it's a very difficult judgment because obviously the economy's got to be encouraged to get back on its own feet, but it also has to be supported extensively, or it won't be able to get up again. So it's a delicate judgment. I think we won't know till we're looking in retrospect about whether the right decisions are being made. But of course the government has emphasised flexibility so that it can make adjustments in the budget in October.
The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is obviously pushing the National Cabinet in the context, I guess, of this economic challenge to start to open borders, to look at a definition of what a hotspot is, and really trying to push the country to open its borders. How's that going?
Well, National Cabinet meets later today, and all the indications are very strong indications that Queensland and Western Australia are certainly not going to go along with the Prime Minister's push. And indeed, over the last 24 hours or so, Scott Morrison's moved back, and the word from his office yesterday was this was just the start of a process. I think even the health advisors, and of course that committee of health advisors includes both federal and state officers, they've disagreed about this whole question of a definition of a hotspot, and certainly Palaszczuk and McGowan are not going to give in to the federal government, and they've made that clear, and that's why the Prime Minister's sort of toning things down a bit.
And do you have a sense of how long this standoff is going to go on for?
It's hard to say. Queensland, of course, has an election at the end of October, and what the Queensland government does is influenced by that. They, of course, would contest that. They'd say it's all the health advice, but I don't think anyone believes that there's not quite a significant political factor there. Western Australia has an election early next year, and similarly I think that the Premier there Mark McGowan is not going to do anything to jeopardise his result. He's got enormous popularity over there and enormous support for the border closure. Of course, Western Australia always thinks it'd probably be better on its own anyway. So taps into a lot of history there.
Well, I was actually looking at my home state, Tasmania, and Peter Gutwin's doing exceptionally well. I think 70 points versus 30 for preferred leader over the Labour Party. And I think it's largely down to they've taken an equally hard line on their borders.
Well, that's right. Tasmania actually hasn't been in the frame so much. People haven't been criticising it particularly, but of course it's been really, really tough as well.
Then obviously there's Victoria. We're starting to see some improvement there and dip down to double digits in terms of new cases, and it's floating there around the 100, and there seems to be positive signs. There's two elements to this, I think. Scott Morrison seems to have been putting pressure on Premier Andrews to ease restrictions and set out the road to recovery. But equally, Premier Andrews is probably buoyed by the improvements he's seen. I think this Sunday he's going to be trying to set out the sort of the road to recovery. Where's the pressure come from? Is it really him driving it, or is he bowing to pressure from Scott Morrison?
Certainly there was a lot of pressure at the start of the week from the federal government. Josh Frydenberg was very, very tough on Victoria. He also released figures showing just how much the crisis there is going to cost the economy, and the whole JobKeeper going forward is going to see Victorians dominating those numbers. So yes, federal pressure. I think that the Premier knows that within the state people really are starting to get cabin fever and do want a way out of this, but he is pretty cautious. So I think we will see quite a long road when we see that roadmap on Sunday. But obviously the journey has to be started.
Yeah, and look, we all have an immense amount of support for the Victorians. I mean, they've had a terrible time of it, so we'll watch that with some interest. You've been in Parliament over the last couple of weeks. It's been a virtual Parliament. A COVID Parliament, I think it's called. And Barnaby Joyce came out this week effectively saying it was removing the rights of parliamentarians. How's it gone, and is this virtual Parliament working?
Well, it's a hybrid, of course, because some politicians have been in the chamber and have been operating face-to-face at respectful COVID distances, of course, but some have chosen not to come and been encouraged not to come to keep the numbers down. They've made contributions, they've spoken in debates, they've asked questions, but I think that the atmosphere is different, and it is more, it is harder for those people to operate as though they were there. For one thing, they can't vote, and that makes a significant difference to the feel of the place, although it's organised in such a way that the respective numbers in the Parliament and the House are reflected. So no one's disadvantaged in terms of government or opposition by those members not having a vote. But nevertheless, Barnaby Joyce certainly sees that as a curtailment of democratic rights, and thinks that the whole thing is too compromising. And
do you think it's working effectively then? I mean,
look, I think in the circumstances it's working reasonably, yes, I do think that, but it's not quite the same. And of course, some of the members from Sydney, for example, were told that they shouldn't go out to Canberra restaurants because they come from a hotspot, and therefore I think that they felt pretty constrained and locked up during the week.
I don't know if you mind me asking about obviously the bill that's particularly interesting to us in the university sector. The bill on the higher education reforms went to the House and had a bit of a rocky ride.
Well, yes, the government's aim was to get this restructuring of university fees, which it's saying will encourage courses where students have got the maximum chance of getting jobs, and the fee increases will be in the humanities, law and so on. Anyway, that bill the government hoped to get through this week. It took it to the House, a then gag debate, which certainly upset Labor a great deal. And Labor then disrupted the next couple of days, the last couple of days of the sitting, on all sorts of issues, sort of in retribution. Now, the government didn't succeed in getting the bill through. It has in fact been sent to a Senate inquiry. It's a pretty quick inquiry, which reports late this month, but nevertheless it does give stakeholders another chance to have a say on legislation which is very controversial.
And of course I expect the university sector will, and others will be making quite a lot of comment during that Senate inquiry.
I would think so, and doing quite a lot of quick work too, because they've got to get in their submissions very rapidly.
Anyway, Michelle, look, as always, it's fascinating and it was wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks a lot, Paddy.